Hi, I've tickled your arcade bits talking about less-known scrolling platformers through time, I've fondled with your RPG pickle too, so I think it's about time that I've given that strategic brain of yours a solid rub. Rub-a-dub-dub-dub, rub. And there's quite a few interesting, but not very popular turn-based strategies that came out throughout the years, so let's jump straight in and check them out together. Reach for the Stars: The Conquest of the Galaxy is one of the earliest examples of 4X games. What is 4X, you may wonder? Well, it's one of the three. Either extra, extreme, exciting experience, or explore, expand, exploit and exterminate. Or the size your mama says she is when she's trying out clearly way too small for her 5X trousers. All three sound as plausible to me. Anyway, what is Reach for the Stars? It's a huge sci-fi themed and space-based strategy game that will see you discovering and exploring unknown galaxies, colonizing planets, meeting alien civilizations, expanding your spaceship fleet and engaging in conflicts when necessary. Or when you feel like it, cause wars aren't always born out of necessity, sometimes it's out of will, greed, prejudice, hate, or because of misunderstandings/mistakes. Mistakes like me unnecessarily calling out your mama, so sorry for that, I'm sure she's great, it was uncalled for. Each planet that you colonize can be set up differently, allocating your available resources between defense, research, development, environmental and social factors, industry and even happiness of your citizens. So, specialization is the key, and there's a lot to micromanage in them. Like surprisingly a lot for when the game came out. In fact, the variety of options in micro and macro management is an overarching theme of the game, and its strongest suit really. Well, next to flexibility only, in fact flexibility is not the best word for it, freedom of choice is better and more suiting. Same as the freedom you have to choose whether you'd like to leave a like, subscribe or even share this video. It's your call, as long as you pick one, cause you know, I have Batman on loan from a friend, yes, plural, and I'm not afraid to use them. You can play Reach for the Stars any way you want to. There's always 4 players in each game, be it human or CPU controlled, and you're not limited to playing it in one way only. You can play militarily, banking on brute force strength, and funny enough even this in few different ways. Or you can focus on exploration and expansion, Star Trek style, going where no man had gone before, exploring and colonizing the unknown. Or you can even decide on setting up colonies and building them up before moving to the new ones. So playing taller rather than wider, so to speak. And all that is just scratching the surface. This version of the game is near complete rewrite of the C64 original, upgrading the graphics considerably, changing the interface into more comfortable menu-based one, and adding a lot of content. Like ground-based armies, new planetary mechanics, new technology trees for navigation and industry, and progressive social maintenance cost. It's the ultimate version of the game, as good, if not better, than the more popular and well-known Amiga outing. Millennium is a strategy and resource management game that is set in the 22nd century. After establishing working and prosperous colonies on Moon and Mars, life on Earth is eradicated by a huge asteroid. How lucky were they that it happened after and not during or before the process, right? Also how unlucky that the entire planet's surface was made barren. Anyway, the planet naturally became uninhabitable, and all that's left of humanity are mainly the citizens of these 2 colonies. And while moon colonists are all about finding new planets and moons to settle on, and eventually to come back to Earth when possible to reclaim it, inhabitants of Mars mutated over the span of their lives there and consider themselves now a superior race to base humans. Most of all, however, they want the Earth to keep, for themselves only. You are in charge of the moon colony and you have to manage your resources efficiently and spread them between researching new technologies, improvement of your base, building new colonies and defense against Martians. Millennium starts slowly, allowing you to familiarize yourself with everything that it has to offer, so you'll double in research first, seeking better tech that would improve the lives of your colonists and give you access to more advanced inventions, like better generators that provide more juice, spaceships that can be used to set up new colonies for exploration or combat, or even defenses, which may seem like a waste of time and space at first, but soon enough will prove crucial for your survival. Eventually, you'll start sending probes out into space to seek out new potential and habitable locales, and this is more or less when the Martian offshoot of Earth survivors will reveal themselves and begin trying to slow your expansion efforts. The game will evolve steadily and at a constant pace, throwing new challenges at you along the way, and you can expect it to surprise you more than once when it's finally in its full swing. If not with how the mutated humanoids living on different planets in our solar system look, then with enemy fleets showing at your door, so to speak, totally uninvited and ready to make themselves home, or even with your colonies deciding that it would be better if they declared independence from you, forfeiting countless investments you've made into them over the years. Millennium is a very interesting and deep title, a precursor to better, more difficult Deuterals that never released on PC, and one game that definitely would benefit from a modern and expanded remake. Fullmetal Planet is best described as very simplified turn-based Dune 2, released few years before the Dune itself did, and based on Fullmetal Planet board game. What is it all about then, and what makes it so Dune-like? Well, there's 4 of you, so you and 3 opponents, be it human or CPU, and you're sent to an alien planet with a mission to extract as much ore from it as possible within a 24-turn limit. So same as Dune, where spice melange was all that families were ultimately after, or is that precious substance here? And same to the more famous successor, your success in Fullmetal Planet is much easier achieved by annihilating all the other opponents than straight up resource extraction. And since they're armed to the teeth, same as you are, you can bet your sweet ass that they're not resting or sleeping, they're scheming how to do the same to you. Fortunately, you're you, so smarter than any other human in the known universe, and yes, I mean you. Yes, you. Don't be so surprised. Take the compliment as it's a fact. So, with your smarts, the mission is won from the get-go. But how you'll get there, to glorious victory over all others, is entirely up to you. All of the board game's features are painstakingly translated to this new digital medium and work as well as they did in a tabletop version. So it's a game of careful balance, for learning to prioritize and to adjust one's decisions to the ever-evolving situation at hand. Resources when gathered can be taken to your base or turned into a military unit or another harvester for faster collections. So while the game is won by whomever has the most ore at the end of it, what's tons of ore good for if you lose your base in the last or penultimate turn to the overwhelming enemy forces? And since we're on the captures of bases, so combat, it's unlike anything that you've seen. It's a mixture of battle isle and chess. As while the number of units is important, knowing how to use them well and ability to predict opponents' moves is as, if not more important even. So, to capture or destroy the enemy's unit, it has to be in firing field of at least 2 of your own units. So, positioning is the key, and especially if you keep the terrain in mind. So hills and mountains grant an extended range, while swamps and reefs render them near useless, at least in direct combat. Interestingly enough, movement in Fullmetal Planet is also its own thing and allows for a lot of freedom when strategizing. So you have this pool of move points that are reliant on number of your units and you can spend them any way you see fit, dividing them between as many or as few units as you'd like. So you could move most or all of your units by a little, or pick 2, 3, 4 of them and spend all the movement points on just them for a quick blitz attack on the enemy from a flank or to retake a strategically important area. The only thing I think Fullmetal Planet could improve on is variety, cause as it stands now, it offers only one map with static resource locations and a very limited initial setup options. So, most games start the same, but luckily, just like in chess, just because the game starts in the same way doesn't mean that each consecutive playthrough will not be entirely different. And more often than not, it actually is. The perfect general, to literally no one's surprise, is a turn-based strategy wargame. Despite the title though, it's not perfect. As a matter of fact, presentation-wise, it's downright ugly, and it doesn't sound the best either. And that's pretty much all the bad I can think of when talking about it. Cause other than that, it's fantastic. It's a really well designed and executed war strategy. It tackles complex and big combat scenarios with ease by implementing a simple and straightforward user interface. And that's probably what made it so popular back then. The fact that it could introduce seemingly demanding genre to people who didn't want to battle with controls and book-sized manuals either, but wanted to get straight into action. And action, Perfect General is not lacking in. It's a scenario type of strategy, meaning that it offers a vast selection of different scenarios, often based on historical battles, in which you could play as both sides of the conflict, experiencing the battle from the perspective of either of them. Every scenario has a designated attacker and defender, and army composition along with terrain features and your tactical prowess is what makes Perfect General infinitely replayable. Before each encounter you get to assemble your army, picking between numerous different units, so light and heavy tanks, infantry, artillery, armored cars, mobile artillery and the likes, keeping all of their characteristics of range, firepower, price and strong and weak points in mind in relation to your role in a particular skirmish. The layout of a map you're battling on is very important too, as its features influence a lot of things. So artilleries, for instance, when positioned on hills have a considerably wider range than when shooting from the flat ground. Tanks move swifter on the roads than in the forest, and cities are vital key points worth securing and holding, as they offer a variety of bonuses. So points, supplies and money. Additionally, units entrench in the cities, considerably raising their defensive capabilities. What's interesting and worth keeping a note of is that shooting with the artillery requires you to aim for where you suspect the enemy units will be in the next round, which adds a bit of guesswork, but also makes Perfect General feeling more realistic, as shooting moving units is rather difficult in real life too, so I heard. And since we're on realism, line of sight mechanics cannot be overlooked either, as not only it's implemented in the game but also done pretty well. So if you don't cover all your blind spots, you can always expect an attack from well hidden unit or units from a flank or back, if they manage to avoid your hawk-like observational skills, that is. While objectively speaking Perfect General is not perfect, it also kinda is, for a very specific kind of a gamer. One that's willing to overlook the presentation entirely and draw enjoyment from experiencing deep strategic encounters that are virtually infinitely replayable, even more so when you start toying with the included scenario editor. Today, in 2024, Perfect General is best playable via its 2003 Windows release that can still be purchased by the Killer Bee Software's website and supports internet multiplayer. Arguably the best way to experience the game. Genghis Khan 2 Clan of the Grey Wolf is a turn-based grand strategy game based on historical achievements and conquest of Temujin, commonly known as Genghis Khan, a founder of once unbeatable Mongol Empire. He united all the major Mongol tribes and led them to conquer large parts of China and Central Asia. Interestingly enough, while it has nothing to do with our game, it's still worth noting that according to 2003's DNA study, it was discovered that close to 16 million men all around the world were genetic descendants of Temujin, proving how much he spread his seeds. Anyway, since we seem to be docking in some odd and uncomfortable ports here, let us raise our full sails and discuss the game. Being made by Koei of Japan, Genghis Khan 2 plays a lot like their other titles, most notable of them being Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Nobunaga's Ambition, so spread between strategic map mode and tactical turn-based battle screens. There are 3 scenarios that you can play the game in, and they differ in the time period that they're set in, which influences a lot of variables, from access to units through political situation to the ownership of provinces and everything in between. So the first, arguably most challenging one, starts before the unification of the tribes and will require you to do it first before you'll be able to think of conquering the rest of the map. And completing this objective will automatically move you to the second scenario, which starts just after the unification and gives you access to the entire world map. It is also a scenario in which you can play as either of the nations taking part in the conflict and not only as Genghis Khan, which is a nice touch for those who like to replay their strategies and expect some novelty with each attempt. And finally, the third is similar in a setup to second, but starts roughly 60 years after, with Genghis Khan long gone and different nations fighting for control of the land. It's worth noting that if you pick Kublai Khan, one of Genghis's grandsons, you'll play the game in the de facto easy mode, as he starts with more provinces than anyone else. Genghis Khan 2, same as other Koei's games, has a very high entry point, and learning all that it has to offer takes a while and is not greatly explained anywhere. So you'll have to fail a couple of times before you start figuring out what's what. It may detract some from playing, but I believe that ultimately it's worth the effort and time investment. Actions that you can take each turn are based on your health points that are in turn dependent on your age and your general skills in politics, war, leadership and charm, ranked from A to E, and all the actions that you will take will be related to one of these skills. Having high score in one of them makes them cheaper to perform and vice versa. These generals can be recruited from captured territories, they can be freed if you defeated them in battle and given the position in your army, or made out of your male offspring. And children, like in most other Koei games, are very important. Sons can be made generals and take over as the lord of the empire if you die, and daughters can be married off to secure the loyalty among your recruited outside of your inner circle generals. Armies are composed of various recruited units and hired mercenaries, and they are all not made the same, with some clearly being better than the others. Most, however, have their strong and weak points and different use case scenarios. Knights, for instance, have incredibly strong charge attack, Mongols have the most move points, cannons are one of the most dangerous units from afar, but can be destroyed by anything at melee range, and there is a lot of these and all are special in one way or another. All that, believe it or not, is still just the tip of an iceberg, and if you want to learn of everything that the game has to offer, you'll just need to give it a chance. Warlords II is a fantasy turn-based strategy for up to 8 players with some superficial role-playing elements. It's a successor and much improved version of 1990's first Warlords and a better looking but mechanically near identical game to its progenitor. It is played on a large overworld map, full of cities and ruins just waiting there to be discovered and conquered by a gaming powerhouse such as yourself. Warlords II came with 5 unique of these maps, and while they provided a lot of variety, released a little while later expansion pack added not only a scenario builder but also a whole set of additional, often fantasy-themed maps with unique units and features. Your main goal in a standard game is to defeat all other heroes and capture their castles to be the last one standing. Each of the sites starts with one city and one hero only, and a whole world waiting to be subdued. Neutral and opponent cities can be captured and incorporated into your kingdom to provide a steady inflow of resources and access to different units. Each of those units varying in stats of movement, strength, cost and time it takes to recruit them. Your heroes lead armies composed of many identical or mixed creatures, kinda like heroes in Heroes of Might and Magic would. As I've mentioned, captured cities can be added to your kingdom, but they can also be pillaged, sacked or razed. Pillaging and sacking prevents the city from producing high-level units in the future, and razing permanently removes it from the map, and there's no way of rebuilding destroyed cities whatsoever. Ruins that you find always contain useful bonuses, and these can be items raising your heroes' stats, gold, allies and a blessing or a quest. Quests are very rudimentary and serve as the role-playing background to all the strategy you'll be involved in. So you can be tasked with searching for particular other ruins, with capturing of a certain city, or looting specified amounts of money. Heroes gain experience and levels, becoming better and stronger, and are as important as the powerful army that they lead. While Warlords II is a great upgrade, building on the foundations of the original, released a little while later deluxe version of it is the ultimate outing. It came with tons of maps and tilesets from the get-go, map editor and support for 256 colors. Many of its scenarios were stylized too, to extend the replayability considerably, adding maps and units based on well-known fantasy lores like Lords of the Rings for instance. Warlords II is fantastic when played with a friend, or even better, friends, but alone it gets old rather quick, all because of its simple design and inner mechanics, proving once more that most things are better shared with others. Still, even alone, if you're a fan of the first game, you'll no doubt find will to sink some hours in this one too. Hammer of the Gods is a very unusual and original turn-based empire-building strategy with tactical combat set in world of Norse mythology. You're in charge of your Viking clan and have to build it up into a powerful empire, all the while aiming to please Odin and complete his final quest. Because you play as an ultimate suck-up. Upon game start, you pick a race you'd like to play as, so either human, elf, troll or a dwarf, and all of them have their own characteristics, military units, weak and strong points, and different hierarchy of gods, which sets you up with a different set of goals to meet. Completing any of the tasks for the gods always rewards you with rather nice and potentially game-changing bonuses. This can be additional powerful military units, flying ships, fast transportation, or higher income in towns to name a few. You can play either on a historically accurate map of Europe from more or less 700 AD, or a randomly generated one. So what does the gameplay involve, you may wonder? Well, you'll invade other countries, raid and plunder cities and fight the enemies. Like Vikings do. Or did. Potato, potato, French fry. Conquered cities can be linked by roads and then fortified with castles to form a strong basis for your empire. But you can also trade and engage in diplomacy and not focus on spilling blood alone. While completing the game requires fulfilling of Odin's quest, you'll be tasked with few more along the way, and they are all very imaginative and definitely the best part of the game. As a general rule of thumb, the higher the god is on the tree of hierarchy, the more demanding the task he or she will require. And this can range from very easy ones, like raiding a monastery or giving away your daughter in marriage to a god, through more challenging ones that require defeating skeletons or giants, and finally, really tough ones, where you'll need to face a dragon or conquer several cities. Combat encounters take place on a side view screen similar in looks and mechanics to that most of us know from Heroes of Might and Magic games, though not as deep or feature-packed, and for the most part working comparably, just with a narrower variety of units. Given that the Hammer of the Gods was released a year earlier though, it could be argued that Heroes of Might and Magic had more time to polish the formula. Anyway, Hammer of the Gods is a unique and generally overlooked by most at the time title, and undeservedly so, as it was a real hidden gem if I ever saw one, and a game well worth spending time at. Also, it would be so much more enticing if it was called Get Hammered with the Gods, as it would be much more interesting, even just to check out. Celtic Tales Balor of the Evil Eye is an isometric turn-based strategy empire-building game with some role-playing elements. Evil Balor and his armies of Formors are the scourge of Ireland. They kill, they conquer, and they drink more than any Irishman could. and that's not something that's achievable like that willy-nilly. Neither of the tribes is strong enough to stand against them alone and free the country from oppression. But if they were to unite under one High King and join forces, they could stand a chance to overcome Balor and his vast forces. So you must pick one of 9 unique champions and work on bettering your clan, uniting all others under your banner, and eventually freeing your homeland and local brands of whiskey from under Balor's greedy thumb. Celtic Tales is a very deep game that makes it clear from the get-go that the developers did their homework working on it, as the attention to historical detail is unprecedented. It's not without the touch of fantasy though, so don't expect it to play it out like a moving history book either. The game itself is based on 4 cornerstones, 4 pillars of fun, if you will. First, being your clan's development, so you'll need to make sure to build farms to cultivate grains, herd animals for trade, mine for ores used in creation of items, and chop for wood to be able to erect buildings, securing a solid resource foundation for your soon-to-be empire to grow and prosper. Second is your hero's development, and it's that role-playing part that I mentioned initially. Heroes come with their own stats, inventory and skill proficiencies, and can be warriors, bards or druids, and only the last 2 are capable of casting spells using Celtic runes. They may be assigned to specific tasks, resulting in them progressing in certain skills and becoming better at performing certain roles. So, strategic planning and training is required for you to have a strong and versatile army. Then there's diplomacy, which as the name suggests is used for contacts and relations with other tribes. You can wage wars, form alliances, trade, send caravans and create unique items. And finally war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Oh my god, cringe. How can it be a cornerstone for winning the game, you may wonder, especially one about uniting forces to defeat evil? Well, while all 4 pillars the game is based on are important and can be used to fulfill your goals, in reality you can ignore the other 3 entirely and just brute force your way through the game, waging wars, uniting factions by conquest and fear to finally defeat the evil. Perhaps in the process becoming the evil one yourself, but it's not impossible. I saw a meme recently that best describes it. It said that if you kill a killer, the total number of killers remains the same. Fits here perfectly, just substitute the killer with great evil. Anyway, Celtic Tales is a unique blend of strategy, management and role-playing, and if played as developers intended, it's a lot of fun and very detailed title that will no doubt be one you'll remember fondly. If chased through combat though, while not easy to pull off, loses a bit of its appeal. Fantasy General is a top-down turn-based strategy, and it's based on Panzer General's upgraded and expanded engine. It's not a simple risking, however, but a full-fledged game that stands on its own and is my most favorite out of all games in the SSI's General series. Story-wise, as in most games in similar setting, the big evil in the form of so-called Shadow Lord, his 4 generals and their army of darkness has taken over most of the world, brutally, efficiently and spilling more blood than anyone else before. Since most hope is lost and people are gearing up for the ultimate defeat and death, you are summoned as the last stand type of a hero, a champion, to be our last-ditch effort at destroying the evil and freeing world from within its iron grip. There are 4 heroes to choose from at the game start, each of them representing a different realm of power and having access to 10 unique unit types with multiple levels of upgrades. Units come from one of 4 categories of mortal, magical, beast and mechanical and improve their abilities with experience. And those with number of victorious battles under their belts, so to speak, are often worth more than handful of fresh ones is. Majority of the game takes place on a hexagonal overworld battle map and works the same way it does in any other general games. So, sees you utilizing your units to battle it out against often overwhelming enemy forces, trying to put them down and stop evil from triumphing. Each unit on the map represents a small squad of up to 15 soldiers at most, with some exceptions to especially powerful ones or heroes that are singular entities. Both sides move all of their units in turns, and battle results are calculated automatically based on the unit types, which of them was an attacker and which was on defense, their special skills, levels and terrain the combat was set on. As in most games in a genre, having the right mix of units available and one that's viable in many different situations is a recipe for success. Winning scenarios rewards you so-called prestige points, which can be spent between missions on new units or research on their newer types. So if you're lacking in a particular area, in air units for instance, you can focus on researching these rather than getting more of the land ones. Please ignore a really bad gameplay in the footage. I've been having some issues with scrolling speed and wanted to go for as many battles in as short time as possible to show off as much of it as I could. So expect your experience to be much smoother when playing. Fantasy General is excellent, it looks great, it plays great, and most importantly, it's hella fun, both in single-player campaign and single-battle multiplayer skirmishes. Spellcross is one of the most undeservedly so ignored and overlooked turn-based strategies of the 90s. I mean, sure, by 1997 most of us was heavily invested in new Windows-based games, but ignoring gems like this one, just because it came out for DOS, was borderline criminal. Let's be clear here, it's not a generation-defining title or a new genre setter, but it's definitely an excellent in its design and very playable game mixing concepts of Command & Conquer, XCOM and Doom out of all things. I know, weird mix, but so is the game. In a good way though. Spellcross is set in an undisclosed post-apocalyptic future and places you in the shoes of Alexander, a colonel in the Alliance forces trapped behind the enemy lines with just a small squad of few men. As you fight your way out of this incredibly uncomfortable position, a very sour pickle if you will reconnect with the rest of the Alliance and join them in the fight against the forces of darkness. The demonic hordes come to Earth through interdimensional gates that the so-called gatekeepers and underlords open to unleash the scourge on the planet. And these monsters, let me tell you, they don't fool around. They're torturing and killing anyone they come across and leaving no souls alive behind. A lot of deep red good though. They do leave a lot of it. They have to be stopped. Because if they won't be, they will unleash a sleeping titan that's been trapped in Earth's core for eons and it will destroy life as we know it. Fortunately you're you, so with your wrinkled, like a 95-year-old man's skin brain, you're more than enough to form a plan, nay a strategy, to push away the invaders and save whatever's left of humanity. The game follows a military campaign struggle against the invading forces and sees you grabbing sectors after sectors, freeing them and securing their funding point support to finance the military efforts. These points can be used to purchase, upgrade or replace lost units, but most importantly to invest in research that will keep you ahead of the curve and capable of forming in a position to the onslaught of enemies. The research, other than granting access to new and more powerful units and components, will also let you learn more about your opponents and will push the plot forwards. Surviving units persist from mission to mission, retaining their experience and equipment, and naturally the longer they stay alive for, the better they get. In combat, units move based on action points, which can be spent on numerous actions, any number of these really, for as long as you have them available. So you can move, attack, perform other special actions or reserve them for opportunity attacks during enemy's turn. As I mentioned initially, Spellcross did not shock the gaming world upon its arrival, but most that it did in a brilliant and very playable way, setting a high bar for future similar games to hope to reach. If you've not played it or even heard of it, make sure to seek it out, it's worth it. So, what do you think of turn-based strategies in the perspective of DOS's most active years, looking at them through some of those less obvious games? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below, and maybe share it too, it helps more than you know. If you didn't, then don't naturally. It was fun talking to you as usual, and I'll see you, or more accurately, talk to you very soon.